Thank you, Madam Chair. With all due respect to the witnesses, I would like to move the motion that I gave notice for on Monday. I will read it out now. Given that, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report, the projected deficit has more than doubled since the fall economic statement of 2024, that the new spending measures transform what would have been a surplus operating balance into a deficit, that he considers that the overly broad definition of capital investments used by the government creates a major discrepancy with his estimates, that the lack of an objective definition of these investments directly influences budgetary decisions, and that the Parliamentary Budget Officer's stress tests indicate that it is unlikely that the government will meet its budgetary anchor of reducing the deficit to GDP ratio, that the committee invite the Parliamentary Budget Officer, as soon as possible, for a period of 2 hours, to examine the current budgetary situation, the methodology surrounding capital investments, and the government's ability to meet its financial commitments. That the testimony of the Parliamentary Budget Officer must necessarily take place before the study of the Budget Implementation Bill.
Merci, Monsieur Garand. Est-ce qu'il y a...
Thank you, Mr. Garand. Are there any members who would like to discuss this? Mr. Garand? Well, just to explain the context, the budget was tabled. It was passed. Now the Budget Implementation Act is coming up, Madam Chair. You know, when there's a budget, we need to avoid overly partisan discussions. We are a committee. We should study the Budget Implementation Act step by step, and to do that, you need to start out in the right way. And what's the best way to do that? Bring in an independent officer of Parliament, someone who is not from the government, who is an agent of Parliament, and that person is the Parliamentary Budget Officer. We have all been working with the PBO for years now. We know that the Parliamentary Budget Office is full of independent, capable people who work for us. We're their client. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has given some criticism about the budget, and there's two ways we could react to that. First, we could do the Donald Trump reaction and attack the PBO, just like people attack judges and commissioners and agents of Parliament. That's the last thing we want. We do not want to behave like some people do south of the border. People who have a blatant lack of respect for institutions. We do not want to do that with the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Instead, we should be asking questions about his methodology. There's new methods used in the budget, and I'm not against innovation. I'm not against new ways to categorize things. I've spoken about this with Mr. Turnbull, with my Conservative colleagues. The budgetary data is being presented in an innovative way, but we do need to understand the ins and outs of this. In my view, the definitions used by the government do not align with what is used in Great Britain. They're not aligned with what is used in Singapore. They're not in line with generally accepted accounting principles. If a private business used the budget's definition, they wouldn't get their financial statements signed by an accountant, unless that accountant was willing to get kicked out of their professional body. We've met with officials from the government in camera. We've sensed a certain discomfort, and we really need to bring in PBO and start the conversation about the budget on the right foot. It's the first thing that should be on our list. It should be before any other discussion in this committee of the Budget Implementation Act. This is a non-partisan motion. After all, what is in the text of the motion is more or less just a summary of the PBO's report. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Well, thanks to my colleague for his remarks. Last time the PBO, the interim PBO, I should say, and clarify, and he hasn't, taken up the permanent, he hasn't received an appointment, and so he's the interim PBO. But last time he was here, the members of this committee didn't allow him to answer the questions that I had. So I did not personally attack him. I asked him good faith questions on some of his comments that he made. So what I have trouble accepting is that Jean-Denis, is putting forward this motion, but if members on this side of the table are not allowed to get good faith responses from witnesses, then it seems like there's a skewed sense of transparency. So you're looking for transparency, you're looking for debate, you're looking for a critical lens to be placed on, you want to hear from the interim PBO. But it seems as though, and Monsieur Garon, I don't know whether you were actually in the seat when the former PBO or the interim PBO was here last. I can't remember whether it was you or not. I don't think it was. So one of your colleagues was here. But they certainly, both the Conservatives and the Bloc members that were here, made sure that I didn't get an answer to my questions from the interim PBO. And I'll play the tape back for you if you need. But it was very clear that they didn't want the interim PBO to answer my good faith questions. So I have a really hard time, given the fact that the interim PBO has just been here, that when you want to call him again, that it seems to me that there's an imbalance in terms of, and an unfairness, I would say, in how that interim PBO would be treated and allowed to answer questions from members on this side. I also would say that, the PBO, the interim PBO, I keep calling him the PBO, but he's the interim PBO, has made quite a few contradictory statements and remarks. So, and we've heard this, so like the latest one is he actually said that our budget was sustainable. So I have a quote here from him. He says, budget 2025 would be deemed sustainable over the long term, which was in his most recent report. Prior to the budget, he had made some pretty broad statements about the budget in public that were inconsistent with his assessment now. Now, that's not me undermining him. It's, in a sense, his own statements sort of contradicting themselves. And it's for this reason that I think, we need to have a very balanced approach. I think we should have, the ability to, have another Parliamentary Budget Officer attend as well. When Mr. Jacques was here, he had said that he admired very much his former PBO, Kevin Page. And what we know is that there's differences of opinion even among budget watchdogs, right? Like they have difference of perspectives. And I think if we're going to have a lively debate about capital budgeting framework, which I appreciate that you may have a difference of opinion on, that we should have a fulsome debate on that topic if we want to have a fulsome debate. Perhaps we should consider, having someone like Kevin Page come as well, who, has said, for example, I'm getting to that. Thank you very much, Mr. Lawton. You don't have the floor, but when you do, I'm sure you can urge us to do all kinds of things. So Kevin Page has said the separation of operating and capital spending is a reporting change, not an accounting change, and it increases transparency on capital investment, which is exactly what the government had proposed to do. And this is exactly why we made the announcement prior to the budget, exactly why we've been clear about what that capital budgeting framework includes, and what definitions of capital investment are included. So I think, to me, this would more than balance out the conversation and allow us to have, and perhaps maybe, Chair, I feel bad for the witnesses here. We should maybe perhaps let them go, because if we're devolving into a debate on a motion, and it's clear that the Bloc members don't really care about the current study on tax havens. But if that's their choice, I understand. Maybe perhaps we should just let the witnesses go so that we can continue this debate. I'm sorry. No, I'm suggesting that we're not going to get to a vote, I don't think, on this. I have lots of remarks, and I have the floor, so I'm just suggesting that might be a good idea if members agree.
Point of order.
Sorry,
I
Mr.
will.
Kelly, 1 second. Yeah, go
Point
ahead.
of order. So, and this is, I think, a point of order about the practice of the committee. If Mr. Turnbull's, if Mr. Turnbull is planning to talk for the next 23 minutes or longer, then I would agree that it would be appropriate to invite our witnesses to disconnect if they wish. But the rest of us are prepared to continue with witnesses.
Well, it sounds to me like Mr. Turnbull is prepared to speak for a while. So I would say to the witnesses, apologies, but thank you. I will leave it in your hands if you would like to stay and watch this debate. But you are also free to go as well. But thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. So thank you. Back to you, Mr. Turnbull.
Great, and thank you very much. So as I was saying, I think for me, there's a good case to be made for having this, request from Monsieur Garon to be included in a budget or BIA pre-study. And I think he made a very good case for actually why this should be a part of a pre-study for the BIA. And I know that members now have access to those documents because it was tabled yesterday. And I know it's a lot of reading for us, but Madam Chair, I think that in my view, we have time and resources that are valuable, and we should spend them to begin that pre-study. It would be great to have members opposite agree to have the PBO and perhaps the former PBO, Kevin Page, as part of a pre-study for the BIA. And I know that members all have critical remarks in the House of Commons on the BIA, and obviously they now have the details, so there's lots of opportunity to get into the details, perhaps hear from witnesses in future meetings, and really start to undertake the work. I know that members opposite had claimed at numerous points in the past that they sought or would seek to have witnesses come from their jurisdictions like Quebec, and their ridings even come and speak to the BIA and what's included in the budget. They had at times even said that there was not enough consultation done. And in my view, we did a lot of consultation over the summer. I know for myself, I spent a lot of the summer traveling. And so the budget is in direct response to lots of input that was given by Canadians, and it would be great to have some of those witnesses come forward and speak to what they think could be improved about the BIA. I know that members opposite will have opinions and views on what witnesses should be heard from, what amendments that they would like to propose in the future when we get to clause by clause on the BIA, and there's lots of time for that. And I know that in past parliaments, I was PS to Finance before in the last parliament for a period of time, and there was lots of pre-study work that happened that was really, I think, fruitful in terms of our efforts and time spent. So I think that would be helpful. So the other thing is that, I think, our government has focused in Budget 2025 on ensuring that we have a capital budgeting framework for a very good reason. We decreased operational spending. We've outlined 2 fiscal anchors, and those are important fiscal anchors. Deficit to GDP ratio declining. Track is very important, as is balancing the operational budget or spending of the federal government in the next 3 years. And these, are also tied to a goal that we have, which is to mobilize about $1 trillion in capital investment. So there's a focus on capital formation, things like investment tax credits, I believe, help to spur and stimulate private investment. We've also offered immediate expensing, and we've called them the productivity super deduction. But there's a list of things that we've offered to boost productivity in Canada that directly responds to the things that we heard from the Bank of Canada governor and the Deputy Bank of Canada governor who were here not so long ago, and pointed to very specific things we can do to boost productivity in Canada. Some of those things are, well, many of them are actually in the budget, and the BIA outlines the details, the specific changes to tax law. For example, manufacturers and processors will be able to write off new machinery and equipment in year one, the 100% write-off. This is clearly going to boost productivity in Canada. There's no doubt about it, because as a business, and I ran a business for many years, you tend to save money to pay your taxes at the end of the year. And when you do that, but the government is moving forward with 100% write-off for new machinery and equipment, or protecting your intellectual property, or helping you expense at a rapid rate, new IT, information technology, new clean technology, or even invest in research and development so you can, offer new products and services. These things allow businesses to take money that they've been saving and invest it immediately in their operations to be more productive, to grow the economy. And so some may argue, Monsieur Garon may argue and take issue with that and say, well, that doesn't provoke capital expenditure. But I think what we heard from the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada is that those measures specifically help to spur investment. And she said anything that spurs investment, that helps to get businesses to invest in themselves would improve productivity in Canada. I know the Conservatives agree with me on this, because they have time and time again in the House of Commons for the last easily 3 years have said we need to do something about GDP per capita in this country. That's going to increase the standard of living for Canadians. That's going to, see, Mr. Lawrence agrees with me emphatically, I see from the other side. So this is great. Well, what's interesting is that he now just voted in the House of Commons against all the measures that we put in the Budget Implementation Act in order to address GDP per capita, in order to raise the standard of living, in order to give real wage growth to workers across Canada that would outpace inflation. And so what's kind of hard to accept, but I understand. I'm used to seeing Conservative hypocrisy all throughout parliamentary proceedings. It's just the case that we find them saying one thing 1 minute and doing the exact opposite the next, and that's something I've gotten used to over the years here. So for me, though, I think that the opportunity here is to study the BIA, as Monsieur Garon says, to have the Parliamentary Budget Officer and his assessment of what should or shouldn't be included in operational versus capital definitions come to the committee. We could also balance that out with a somewhat critical lens from his mentor, Kevin Page, who now runs, I think it's the Center for Fiscal and Democratic Studies, if I'm not mistaken, and who I think has a varying view on how these things would play out. So, for me, it makes sense to have this as part of a BIA pre-study. I know that perhaps the members opposite would agree to that if I were to propose an amendment. I'm not sure, whether they would or not, but I'm hopeful. And sorry, Madam Chair, I seem to be losing my voice.
Jump in there, Jake. It's your shot, man. Come on. It can go on. It can go on. Don't you worry.
Yeah, Kevin Page has also recently said, in the current economic environment, he says, I'm comfortable with budgetary deficits in the 2.5% range of GDP. let's remember, colleagues, that Canada has a lower deficit to GDP ratio than Germany, Italy, UK, France, and the United States. And that's including all of the generational investments, and I know Mr. Garon loves the term generational investments in Budget 2025. Those are when investments in the economy that create capital formation, by the way, have returns to taxpayers and Canadians for multiple generations. Thank you very much. I always liked Philip Lawrence for the record. Thank you. So, actually, that helped. Thank you. I also would note that Mr. Page recently said we need a focus on economic growth. We need capital investment, he says, to boost innovation, improve our infrastructure, diversify trade. He said we also live in dangerous times and we must meet our NATO spending targets. So this is comments from the first Parliamentary Budget Officer who was appointed by, remind me, Mr. Lawrence would know this. Stephen Harper, yeah, thank you. So former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, the Conservative Prime Minister, appointed Kevin Page. I think it was a good appointment. And at 7 years, he was the first parliamentary watchdog, or the budget watchdog, as members like to call him. And, he's really well respected. I know the interim PBO was here and said how much he admired Kevin Page. So I would propose to have Kevin Page attend as well. And I think that's more than reasonable if we want to get clear on, what should be considered a capital investment and the definitions around that, that we should sort of balance out the witness testimony. I already had mentioned that the interim PBO had deemed our budget sustainable. Kevin Page has also said the same multiple times. He said, I think the analysis that we've seen from finance, from the Parliamentary Budget Office, from the IMF last year, is that Canada is fiscally sustainable. So that's something Kevin Page said recently. He also said that he thought the language from the interim Parliamentary Budget Officer, Jason Jacques, is just wrong, and he should walk that back. Quite frankly, he should tell people that our fiscal situation is sustainable. So again, I think we have varying opinions from these budget watchdogs. By no means are they homogeneous in terms of what they believe and what their perspectives are. And I think it's good for democracy to have debates about these things, as long as there's various perspectives and that members opposite don't try and shut down Liberal members when we ask questions, that we also get the opportunity, as is our right within parliamentary privilege, to pose questions to witnesses, but also to have a witness list. Even the way that we...
Sorry, Mr. Turnbull. Yes, Mr. Kelly?
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Turnbull. Given the history we've had around struggling to end these meetings within the rules, I want to be clear that Conservatives, that we do not give consent to adjourn this meeting until until this matter has been disposed of. We understand that there are resources to, we're told, 5 hours and 15 minutes of resources.
Sorry, Mr. Kelly, this isn't a point of order. Thank you.
Just a reminder.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
5.5 hours.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Turnbull, you can continue.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate MP Kelly giving me a slight break for my hoarse voice. I really appreciate that, and it's always appreciated. Kevin Page also recently said, if you put the deficit and debt in perspective, we're not in a bad place with respect to other countries. With respect to our credit rating, we're actually in a pretty good place. That's a direct quote from Kevin Page. So these are important perspectives to have at this committee, I think. So I'd like to propose an amendment to Monsieur Garon's and I'm going to read it in English. I apologize. I have it in French as well. And
J'aimerais quand même faire un appel au règlement. J'attendais que M. Turnbull...
Point of order. I'll wait for... sorry, yes? This has to do with decorum. It's the first time I brought this up, but earlier, Mr. Turnbull used my first name. Is this what we do in committee? I don't call people, Ryan, Carlos. Is this allowed? Are we allowed to call MPs by their first name? No, it's a real point of order. And another thing has to do with the interim parliamentary budget officer. In his motion, Mr. Turnbull calls him the parliamentary budget officer. Is he not showing a lack of respect towards an agent of parliament by insisting that he's interim all the time, repeating the term interim? I'll consult with the clerk.
Ni le premier ni le deuxième, c'est une appel.
Neither of those are true points of orders. Well, it's a principle of respect. I will ask MPs to wait until I'm done before speaking. That, too, is an issue of decorum. Those are not points of order. Those are questions of decorum. I will remind all committee members to please act in a way that respects decorum. We will now give the floor back to Mr. Turnbull.
Yeah. I know that committees operate informally, and from my perspective, having been here for 6 years and on, I don't know how many committees, 7 or 8 committees, that we've often used each other's first names on the record. So no disrespect was meant to Mr. Garon at all. Also, the interim parliamentary budget officer is actually the title of the interim parliamentary budget officer. That's clear. So that's just fact. It's not meant to be disrespectful at all to him. In fact, I've had very good conversations with him, and I respect him very much. So there's no disrespect intended, and I hope members don't read anything into that. So I was going to propose an amendment to Mr. Garon's motion. Now, you'll excuse me, but I'm going to read it en anglais. So, sorry, my voice is a bit hoarse. Given that Budget 2025 and the Budget Implementation Act 2025 have been tabled in the House of Commons, the committee invite the Parliamentary Budget Officer and former Parliamentary Budget Officer Kevin Page as soon as possible for a period of 2 hours to examine the current budgetary situation, the methodology surrounding capital investments, and the government's ability to meet its financial commitments, and that the testimony of the Parliamentary Budget Officer and former Parliamentary Budget Officer be included as part of the committee's upcoming study on the Budget Implementation Act. And that's what I'd like to propose. I think I've already argued for why I think that's an amendment that's, a good, balanced, and fair amendment to be able to proceed. But more than happy to debate this for as long as members want.
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Have you sent that in to circulate to? Okay, so we'll just take a brief suspension while that's circulated, and everyone has a chance to receive it. Would wish to debate on the sub-amendment? The amendment, sorry. Mr. Letao. Okay, thank you.
Beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Alors,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also think my voice is giving out a little bit, but we'll make it through. So, we are talking about Mr. Garon's proposal, and what we proposed via a sub-amendment is that we would agree to bring in the interim parliamentary budget officer, but we would also want Mr. Page We'd want him to come as well, and that way we would be able to talk to both of them.
Mr. Lawrence?
I know that there are several new members across the way, and the parliamentary secretary has lost his voice. So maybe I just would remind the new members that they can just go to a vote at any time.
That is not a point of order. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Letao.
That is useful information, we know that. And precisely what we would like to accomplish is to go to what M. Garon was saying at first, manquer de respect aux institutions.
He spoke about a lack of respect for institutions. And the institution we have here is the House of Commons. And the House of Commons voted on Monday to approve the budget. And as such, it is the will of the House of Commons to move on to the next stage. A debate, a discussion, an analysis of the Budget Implementation Act. So I think that ought to be our mission. That ought to be our primary role. We ought to respect our institutions, namely the House of Commons. So, in a spirit of collaboration, we proposed to add Mr. Page to Mr. Garon's motion, so that the discussion and analysis and debate that takes place at that meeting can be included in the pre-study. I'm not sure if it's pré-étude is the correct French term, but the pre-study for the Budget Implementation Act. I really don't think we are straying too far from Mr. Garon's original motion. And frankly, I don't understand what the problem is. I'm somewhat mystified by all this. And why is it important to move on to the next stage? Because there's a certain urgency. We must do our job. We must implement the budget passed by the House. And why is it so urgent? Because we are living in a particularly complex time. Obviously, the decisions made by our neighbors to the south, the United States, about tariffs, and I'll be generous and call it somewhat chaotic. Those decisions have had an impact. They've led to great uncertainty in the economy, not just in North America, but all over the world. And this uncertainty has led to, among other things, a noted slowdown of the Canadian economy. Yes, the economy did slow down in the third quarter. Yes, we did. It was negative. We hope that we can turn the ship around, but in the meantime, the economy is quite weak. And the result of this uncertainty is a chaotic economy among our neighbors to the south. There's no business that would invest in an environment where they don't know the game rules. This chaotic tariff policy also created upward pressure on prices. An issue that our Conservative colleagues bring up very frequently, the price of food. Yes, it is true. Food prices are still high, But this is the consequence of the American tariff policy. It drove up the cost of food on both sides of the border. So, inflation remains an issue. It is under control in Canada. It is within the Bank of Canada's target range. But given the real problems relating to the upward pressure on prices for basic goods such as food, the situation is still a complex one, and this has an impact on everyday life, certainly, but then there's macroeconomic impacts. And we took this into account while writing our budget. We note that there's people are less willing to invest, and this has made the economy slow down even further. All of this is to say that, and circling back around to the need to do the work and implement the budget, what we're dealing with is not just the normal cycle of inflation where things work themselves out. As our Prime Minister noted a few times, we are witnessing a breakdown of the old ways, a structural shock being dealt to the Canadian economy. And whence comes the need to intervene, and quickly? And this brings me to our budget, which was passed by the House of Commons. That budget contains massive investments in the Canadian economy. And yes, there is a deficit, $78 billion. But now is the time to act. We need to deal with the uncertainty facing us. And we hope that our investments will help us get through to the other side. And if our support is to do what it is supposed to, we need to do what we are supposed to. And after a thorough study, we should implement the budget. So I entirely agree with Mr. Turnbull's sub-amendment. We do want to invite the interim Parliamentary Budget Officer, but we want to invite Mr. Page as well. And in doing so, we could spend a few hours here in committee talking to these two individuals. And the contents of the discussion would feed into the pre-study. Thereby kicking off the process to implement the Budget Implementation Act. Something else, which is of particular importance, is a problem that has been long-standing in Canada: slow productivity. We're not seeing a growth in productivity, and in this budget there are a number of appealing measures that are aimed at increasing productivity. And this gets me to the heart of what Mr. Garon has proposed. The definitions of capital investment are unclear, to say the least, according to Mr. Garon, and he thinks we're trying to cover up something. No, there's nothing we're covering up. In fact, we're putting information into before the public eye. My colleague noted this, but Mr. Page did as well. In the budget, we're not so much putting in place accounting changes, not at all, no. We're simply putting in place reporting changes. So nothing is being covered up here. And in fact, we are making things more transparent. Because we want Canadians to be kept informed about what their government is doing. Madam Chair. So, yes, we divided up state spending between operational spending and investments. But everything is still there. The bottom line is clear that we know what the deficit is, $78 billion. There's nothing we're covering up or hiding. We're not trying to hide the scale of the deficit. It is a large deficit, $78 billion. It is a large sum of money. It's 2.5% of Canada's GDP. But of course, I would suggest that we don't look at these numbers in an absolute sense. It's all relative. You have to look at the size of the economy in order to determine whether something is out of the ordinary. We must consider whether we are able to absorb a deficit of that size, 2.5% of Canadian GDP. And, Madam Chair, I would say that this is not a historic deficit. Unfortunately, throughout Canadian history, we have witnessed deficits much higher than 2.5% of GDP. And looking around the world now, a 2.5% of GDP deficit is seen as quite manageable. And maybe Mr. Garon will appreciate this, but I'd like to take you back to the discussions held in Europe prior to the creation of a common currency, the euro. Discussions were held in Maastricht, and at that time, the Europeans said that EU member states should aim for public deficits under 3% of GDP. That's the European gold standard, the rule of Maastricht. Despite our deficit being large in absolute terms, it is 2.5% of GDP. So it is, and in the years to come, it will be lower.
Who had it? Mr. Lawton? Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Lawton. But please make it a real point of order.
Absolutely. I do not doubt my colleagues' knowledge and interest in the Maastricht Treaty and the conversion to the euro. I fail to see what this particular line of the filibuster has to do with the amendment that we are supposed to be debating right now. It's a relevance point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton.
That's a legitimate relevance. Are you saying the Maastricht Treaty is connected to Mr. Turnbull's amendment?
Mr. Lawton, Mr. Leto has the floor. Thank you very much.
We're talking about the budget. We're talking about the deficit. We're talking about the necessity to move ahead with the BIA, with the Budget Implementation Act, and we are suggesting that that effort that we include the discussion with Mr. Page and Mr. Jacques as a pre-study, within the pre-study of that. And the reason I was trying to explain why that is necessary is that the government felt that we had to intervene, we had to support the economy with massive investments, which we did. We're not hiding anything. The deficit of 2.5% of GDP is entirely manageable for the Canadian federal government. It is within reason, and particularly since most a significant portion of that deficit is going to be those funds are going to be used to invest and to improve so the supply side of the economy, to make sure that we do have sufficient productive capacity so that we can grow in the future and grow in a non-inflationary way. In the meantime, Madam Chair, in the meantime, we also need to realize that if we do nothing, what this international situation has already caused is a lowering of the growth path for Canadian GDP. So Canadian GDP is already on a lower path. It will still be going up in a kind of a cyclical way, but in the absence of government intervention and government sufficient fiscal impetus to the economy, we would not be able to return to the pre-shock level of GDP activity. So all this to say that there is a sense of urgency in proceeding with our analysis and discussion of the Budget Implementation Act, and that we do that as soon as possible. And in the pre-study to that analysis, if we can have Mr. Page and Mr. Jacques come here and discuss it with us, I think we would all be better off, and we could start then this very important work, because one should not take things for granted. Without public support at this very critical time, the Canadian economy could slide into a situation where we really don't want to go. We are having already some sectors that have been targeted by our neighbors with specific tariffs, namely steel, aluminum, but lumber as well, and then of course automobiles. These are important sectors in our economy, and this just shows that we need to get going with our own process of redirecting and making sure that the Canadian economy is on a future more resilient and more stable path. This moment is not the one to start imposing very restrictive fiscal policy, as our conservative friends appear to suggest. In recent discussions, they have, and in recent statements in the House of Commons, they view that this deficit is way too high. So the conclusion I take from those statements is that they would rather have $40 to $50 billion less spending, so that the deficit will be smaller. But at this particular point where we are, if we have such a drastic reduction in public investment, that is what some economists that Monsieur Garon knows very well, that's what is usually referred to as a toxic austerity, and I don't think we want to go there. That would certainly plunge the Canadian economy into a deep recession if we were to do that at this particular time and adopt a super restrictive fiscal policy. That's one of the issues, for example, that we could discuss with Mr. Page and Mr. Jacques. What is their view of the role of fiscal policy? What do they think would happen to the Canadian economy if in 2026 we would cut $40–50 billion from planned investment as we've stated in our budget. So that's why it's very important to start this work. I think there is general agreement that yes, we should have Monsieur Jacques and then Mr. Page appear before the committee. I think it's fairly consensual that we do that, but that appears to be something that our friends on the other side are not willing to accept, which is unfortunate. We think it's reasonable on our side to do it that way. Get the pre-study going and get going on the Budget Implementation Act. So, Madam Chair, for now I would stop here, but I would certainly allow my colleagues to express their opinions as well, and I would return with some more comments.
Thank you, Mr. Littau. Mr. McDonald?
Chair, I would just say to our colleagues that basically we're looking at a motion and an amendment to the motion that's just going to inform us a little more on making decisions as we go clause by clause on the BIA. So what I would suggest is that, Mr. Garon talks about the capital and operating expense definition in his motion. I'm not a former Minister of Finance from Quebec, but I ran a business, and we all know that capital items are investments and operating expenses are operating expenses. And we can debate the criteria on either side, but I think what we have to do is follow the will of Parliament. It was a vote that was very close, but there was a decision made that and voted in majority of support for this Budget 2025. The many measures that are in Budget 2025 are measures that constituents in my riding or my province or Atlantic Canada are waiting for because of the uncertainty in the economy caused by the tariffs. We need to implement the investments, get on with the program of governing, and move forward. I guess I question why we're not going right to a vote on this, because we should have full support for bringing in more informed opinions. And all that the Parliamentary Secretary has amended is to bring in Kevin Page, a well-respected former Parliamentary Budget Officer, appointed by Stephen Harper way back in the day. Surely a second opinion or more information is not going to harm our ability to study the Budget Implementation Act going forward. But I think we really need to, bear down on what our role here is at committee. The BIA is tabled in the House. There's a sense of urgency in the country to get some investment going so we can turn our economy around. And for those reasons, I support the sub-amendment. I want to get on with the business of governing and studying the BIA so that we can implement all those measures of investment as soon as possible for the Canadian economy. I'll turn over to my colleague here now.
Mr. Littau is on the list next.
Oh, well.
Yeah. You'll be added to the list.
Okay.
Yeah. Zawadzki.
Perhaps Mr. Turnbull can.
Okay. There's a list. Yeah. So Mr.
Thanks to
Turnbull.
my colleagues for chiming in and contributing to the debate. I know it's an important debate to have on this particular topic. We should get down to studying the BIA. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Thank you to my friend, Mr. Garon.
So, I'd like to sort of start by saying that, Canada has a very strong fiscal position when compared to our G7 peers. For example, we have the lowest net debt to GDP ratio in the G7. I know we often say that, in Parliament. But I don't know if members opposite have had the chance to actually see how much lower our net debt to GDP ratio is than our G7 counterparts. So Canada's is at 13.3%. Germany is at, who is the closest to us, is at 48.7%. United Kingdom is at 94.6%. The United States is 99.6%. France is 108.2%. Italy is 126.9%. And Japan is 130.1%. That's actually in the budget, so it's, you know, it's data-based that's collected in the Fiscal Monitor, published in the Fiscal Monitor of the International Monetary Fund. So it is the latest sort of indicators on who in the G7 has the lowest net debt to GDP ratio. So that's a significant indicator of Canada's strength. And as my colleague was eloquently saying earlier, this is one of the reasons that Canada has the fiscal space. According to the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, Canada is focused on growth. She said, and I'll quote her, Canada is focused on growth. The areas that Canada has identified, housing, infrastructure, energy, strategic projects, these are areas where Canada can lift up productivity. We have countries in the G7 that are in a better fiscal position. Germany and Canada stand up in that regard. They recognize that this is a very testing time and they need to use their fiscal space. So this is an acknowledgement from the head of the International Monetary Fund that recognizes that Canada and Germany, who share a AAA credit rating, actually have the fiscal space to invest in themselves, to invest in housing, infrastructure, energy, strategic projects, all of which will lift up productivity. Now, those investments are important. Right now, at this juncture, obviously because our country and its economy are being threatened by the trade war that have disrupted the global economy, as our economy is intertwined with the United States from many years of integration between supply chains in Canada. There's a process of disentanglement that's going to need to take place. And in order to do that, to counteract the drag on our economy, we need to make investments, strategic investments, investments in our advantaged, our industries that have strategic advantages to grow. And we're doing that with multiple, very sizable investments with a focus on capital investment that I know some of my colleagues are interested in questioning the definitions of what counts as a capital investment. And I think that's a legitimate conversation to have. It's a legitimate conversation to start a study on the Budget Implementation Act. I know that members would be aware that that was tabled in the House yesterday, and that there are copies available for members of Parliament. So there's certainly information that can inform this debate. And it would be great to start it out in the right way, to have the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the interim one, and the former one come and present their perspectives, and certainly ask, all committee members could take the time to ask them questions. I'd also mentioned earlier that Canada has one of the lowest deficit to GDP ratios as well. It's at currently about 2.2%. I have those figures as well here that are, I believe, very important. Japan is the only country in the G7 that has a lower deficit to GDP ratio than Canada, and Canada is at 2.2%. But notice that Japan has a lot higher debt to GDP ratio than Canada does. Canada has a 2.2% deficit to GDP ratio and has committed to a declining ratio over time. Thank you. Germany has a 2.5% deficit to GDP ratio, Italy 3.3%, United Kingdom 4.3%, France 5.4%, and the United States, the highest in the G7, has a 7.4% deficit to GDP ratio. So those are numbers that may not mean anything to members opposite, but they certainly imply that Canada has a healthy balance sheet. And experts around the world, including the IMF, including the Bank of Canada governor, including former PBO Kevin Page, have all said Canada has the fiscal space. In fact, Kevin Page recently said that he was really comfortable. He said, I'm comfortable with budgetary deficits in the 2.5% range of GDP. He indicates that our economy is weaker than it needs to be and that we need to help grow that economy, and by making these investments that we're proposing in Budget 2025, that this will allow us to increase productivity and growth in Canada and make us more competitive. I had mentioned earlier that there were productivity super deductions, which is a fancy way of saying that there's accelerated cost allowances or accelerated depreciation. These measures in our budget have made Canada even more competitive. We were already one of the lowest and most competitive in terms of a marginal effective tax rate. Compared to the OECD average, we are now 4.5% more competitive, and the same with the United States, 4.4% more competitive. That, to me, is a good indicator of how much capital we'll be able to attract, because that's what lots of investors will pay attention to. If Japan or the United Kingdom is around 30% of a marginal effective tax rate, that's significantly higher than Canada, which will now be at 13.2%. Those are significant differences that make Canada competitive in the race to secure foreign direct investment. Now anyway, I think that we should all agree with a very rational proposal that I've made here on ensuring that we can have a balanced debate, a fair debate, that we can kick off this Budget Implementation Act's pre-study, with some experts. It would be great to also have the Minister of Finance come to committee. It'd be great to have some fruitful, productive conversations with other committee members about how we could structure that pre-study. We could certainly divide up the budget into themes and have witnesses and experts come and talk about the BIA, and I think it would be very, very useful for us to get their perspectives. I know members opposite normally welcome those opportunities. I can't understand why they wouldn't at this point, but I guess that's their prerogative. Maybe they're more interested in, I guess, playing partisan politics instead of actually studying the BIA. Pardon me, Madam Chair. Now, I know that the drag on our economy has been pretty significant. The budget actually goes to great lengths to show just how our economy is being impacted. There's a whole section. It's after the comprehensive expenditure review. It shows how we're spending less on government and more in terms of capital investment to spur that. But it also, basically shows just how much Canada's economy is being impacted by the global trade frictions and trade war that was unfortunately, started by the new administration in the United States. We've seen that the U.S. average tariff rate on trade counterparts that Canada is one of the lowest in the world. That's relatively good news for Canadian industries, but we know that that is not felt the same way across Canada. In fact, there's key industries that are disproportionately impacted. We know that steel and aluminum, lumber, and automotive have all been drastically impacted by the tariffs placed upon their industries, and unfairly so. But we also know that these have weakened Canada's economy, these tariffs. They've caused a degree of uncertainty in the marketplace, globally felt. It's one point in the budget we've included a table that shows the World Uncertainty Index, and it shows that investors and business owners are feeling a degree of uncertainty not seen since the 2008 financial crisis. It's actually greater than that. It shows up on graphs greater than what people experienced in the 2008 financial crisis. Now, that's the crisis that was a hard one for our economy, but I would argue that what Canada's been through the pandemic and the post-pandemic shocks to our economy, that we've now experienced more shocks throughout our economy, and this one is even bigger because it actually requires a reorientation of trading flows and relationships all across the world. And so, what we're seeing is, thank you very much, chronically low business investment, because of an over-reliance on U.S. demand for Canadian products in the past. We see a lot of these things impacting our economy. Obviously, we've seen some job layoffs. The economy has actually been quite resilient and bounced back in other ways with job numbers in the past couple of months actually exceeding expectations. And we are trying to counteract a number of these sort of things that are dragging down the Canadian economy by making investments, by buying Canadian, by ensuring that we can, spur productivity gains, that we can be more competitive from a tax perspective. We've done a lot of things in this budget to encourage greater resilience and growth, ensure competitiveness, boost productivity, to stimulate our industrial base, which we heard through the Prime Minister's Economic Growth Caucus. We've heard many stakeholders. In fact, all the chief economists from the largest banks in the country came and made recommendations about how the Government of Canada could address many of the challenges that were being experienced based on the degree of uncertainty. And many of them, in fact, we've included in this year's budget 2025. We acknowledge that Canada has lots and lots of strengths. We have lots of opportunities to diversify trade. We have, strategic sectors and industries that can grow, but we need investment to do that. We need to create certainty where there has been some uncertainty placed upon these industries. And in order to do that, I think we've done our very best to ensure that there's things like investment tax credits. Those are clearly outlined for critical mineral projects, for mineral development in general, for those projects at the exploration phase, but also ensuring that there's funding and financing options at other critical phases for the development of those resources. Canada, we've often said that and heard that Canada is a resource-based, a natural resource-based economy, and it is true traditionally, but we also have other opportunities that exist across our economy. In fact, statistics show that our small to medium-sized enterprises actually contribute more jobs and more trade with other countries, and I think that can be a focus as well for our discussions when we get into discussing measures to support small to medium-sized enterprises across Canada and continue to diversify trade with other countries, because, of course, there's opportunities to grow businesses all across Canada. And you know, buying Canadian right now really is a core part of our strategy, because it ensures that as we move forward with these major projects and attracting the capital needed from our pension plans, from global investors, into you know, key infrastructure that Canada needs, whether it's energy infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. There's many forms of infrastructure. I'm sure the members have seen the list of projects and the rounds of those projects with the Major Projects Office. These are good news for our country. There's absolutely no doubt that these will bring jobs, attract investment, grow our economy, and serve Canadians for generations to come. And this is what my friend Monsieur Garon loves about the budget. He loves the term generational investment. It's his favorite term. He tells me over and over again in private. He really enjoys that because he understands how important the next generations are for our country, and the fact that these investments will serve Canadians for many years to come. Young people really do need us to focus on growing the economy and unlocking opportunities for them. And I think this budget really does that. There's opportunities like in my region. We have the Darlington new nuclear project. I was so grateful to attend this announcement with the Prime Minister. So there's 4 small modular reactors, the first in the G7 that will be deployed. And it's going to provide, or the 4 reactors, once they're built, will provide 1.2 million homes with clean energy. This is remarkable progress. And yes, I know opposition members have at times said, oh, these projects were already going to happen. It's true that some of these projects were moving forward, but that doesn't mean that they can't be expedited, that attracting the capital they need to actually get to completion won't serve them well. In fact, it will serve Canadians well to expedite these projects, to ensure the approvals necessary, to make sure that the Darlington new nuclear project happens, that the 4 small modular reactors that will provide 21,700 jobs, 21,700 jobs. That is a significant number. Now, a lot of those are in the construction phase, about 18,000 of them are in the construction phase, with 3,700 in the operations of those SMR facilities in the future. So that's significant. I mean, to me, in my region of Durham region, where we have 2 nuclear reactors, we have Pickering and Darlington, which are being refurbished. We believe that, you know, these are, I had neighbors for many years that worked at Ontario Power Generation, great people, great hardworking people, and I'm glad to see so many of them very supportive of the fact that our government unlocked $2 billion through the Canada Growth Fund to ensure that, and that's not just public investment, that includes private investment, because remember, the Canada Growth Fund was set up by our government to offer financing for major projects, to help pursue our climate objectives strategically across Canada, There's been a number of announcements, but their mandate is focused on leveraging private capital to the tune of about a 3-time multiplier to any public investment that's put in. So again, when you think about what we're doing, and this goes to the heart of what I think Monsieur Garon wants to focus on with having the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the interim one, come to the committee. And I'm arguing that obviously we should have the former one as well, who is sort of the mentor to the interim PBO. That when the government puts forward things like the Canada Growth Fund, in fact, we're using a kind of a blended finance model where the public investment is being used to sort of de-risk private investment in areas where that's necessary. This helps to draw in private capital, crowd it in. This helps to get these kinds of big projects funded and built. Obviously, with the sort of regulatory review process being streamlined with the Major Projects Office, we've got the ability to really pull together all of the regulatory approvals that are necessary into one kind of term sheet almost that says, hey, your project will be approved if you meet all of these criteria. And that's the point of having a Major Projects Office. It's to simplify the process, which has been very arduous and onerous on many, many, many stakeholders that are trying to get major projects done in Canada. And we've heard this from all kinds of stakeholders across the country for years. And I'm glad that we've stepped up to address that. So getting back to the new nuclear project in Darlington as one of many projects that our government is investing in. And again, this is part of our commitment in this budget to build infrastructure, housing, defense, and these strategic projects that I think are going to really boost our economy. Again, the Premier of Ontario, a good progressive conservative. I never thought I would be saying that. I'm sitting here saying, wow, at this point, the person I thought for many years I had many differences with, he was there standing with us, making investments in the new nuclear project. So we had some progressive conservatives in Ontario standing up for the new nuclear project. It was great to see. It's too bad the Conservative Party in Parliament at the federal level can't see the value in investing in Canada. It seems that they have no regard for what it takes to get investment into our country, get Canada's economy moving forward. I thought the Conservative Party, to me, was always the party that claimed to be fiscally responsible, that claimed to boost the economy, to care about businesses, and yet they voted down deductions for businesses that would allow them to invest in themselves and boost their productivity and growth. It's like they don't want Canada's economy to grow. It's so apparent that they don't seem to really care about Canada's economy growing at all. They don't want to support our business community. Like my business community in Whitby is very strong. We have roughly 900 members. I might be exaggerating. Maybe it's only 800 members of the Whitby Chamber of Commerce. But it's a significant community of small businesses. And, when they hear about immediate expensing, when they hear about mobilizing capital, when they hear about major infrastructure projects, they are ecstatic. They can't understand why the Conservative Party of Canada won't support them in their times of need, won't help unlock capital for them, won't help mobilize, won't help reduce red tape, won't help, streamline approval processes for projects. They can't understand where the Conservative Party is today. They really can't. I don't think they understand what the party of the Conservatives at the federal level stands for at all, because they see a contrast. They see the Ontario Conservatives standing with our Prime Minister, making these big announcements, supporting our automotive industry, and it's a conundrum that I don't think many business operators and owners can understand these days as to where the federal party really is. Do they care about the economy? Do they care about businesses? Do they really want to grow the economy? It seems the answer is clearly no. There are so many other major projects on the list that are exciting. You know, I got to travel to Iqaluit. I'm serious that Mr. Stevenson is new to committee. Welcome. I'm very excited about the projects on the major projects list. The one in Iqaluit in particular, because I got to go to Iqaluit during the pre-budget consultation process and hear from the Inuit leadership. I think I'm getting my voice back.
But if you want
Yeah. Yeah, merci. I'm almost done. The project in Iqaluit is a hydro project, very exciting project. It's going to ensure that Iqaluit and individuals in remote communities don't have to burn diesel to power their communities, to heat their homes, which they do now. I think it's, I hope I don't botch the number, but I think it's 13 million liters. No, 13. I think it's 13 million liters of diesel. I'm going to check that just to make sure. So, but it's a very significant amount of diesel that will no longer need to be burned in those communities, saving obviously those emissions from entering our atmosphere, and so contributing to our action on climate change, while also ensuring that those communities have renewable energy and reliable energy for many generations to come. I think that's good news. There's no way to spin that as bad news. Every time I think, we had, better than expected job numbers, I always say, well, there's no way the Conservatives could spin that as bad news. And they still do anyway. They stretch it, they contort it into bad news somehow. They find a way. When the economy grows, they're going to spin it into bad news. It's always the way. I guess it's just something I've gotten used to over 6 years of being in Parliament, is that there's no missed opportunity to turn good news into bad news when it comes to the Conservatives today. But I really believe in our budget. I believe that the trade diversification work that the Prime Minister is obviously today in Parliament being criticized for, Conservatives don't want our Prime Minister to be out there diversifying our trade, don't want us to disentangle our economy from the U.S. and actually counteract the significant drags on our economy that we're experiencing. It's as if at all costs our economy needs to fail so that their narrative can stay in existence, that we don't take the wind out of their narrative. It's a shame that they don't really care about Canadians actually being successful, but rather just seem to want us to fail. They think that owning the Liberals is a way to, somehow support the Canadians, but it's not. It's not support for anybody. It's actually just disrupting the progress and the growth in our economy that will be achieved by passing the Budget Implementation Act. There's so many measures in the BIA. I've had a chance to go through it. I'm very lucky as Parliamentary Secretary to Finance to have the chance to dive into the details on the BIA because there's so many tax deductions and very useful aspects of the BIA that relate to so many things that Canadians want to see, and so many aspects of our economy and our society that will be strengthened. Just the defense portion of it. I mean, and defense, our defense industrial strategy, again, continues to support that industrial base that I talked about. I remember National Bank, when we met with their chief economist. Yeah, they said the best thing that the federal government can do is support an industrial base to grow again in Canada. Now, there's the diverse perspectives across the chief economists at our banks, but I think many people agree with that perspective, that our industrial base in Canada is so important for the success of our economy. And I see Mr. Lawrence agreeing, and it's so great to hear that in committee. And I do appreciate his support. I wish it converted to a vote of actually supporting things that support our industrial strategy. And the defense industrial strategy is related to the industrial strategy, of course, because Canada can continue to differentiate itself, can continue to invest in defense and innovation. I recently showed my support for Ontario Tech University, which is in Oshawa, so right next door to my riding. Really great university that does all kinds of great work. It's sort of like the technology center, epicenter for Ontario. They're doing work on nuclear. They're doing work on defense innovation. They've got all kinds of stuff going on in terms of research and, the ability to work on drones and other technology that can apply to our defense strategy is really key. But what's surprising to me is I watched as Conservatives voted against raises for our armed forces members. And I don't know how they can look in the mirror when they go home at night or in the morning when they wake up, because I don't know how I would look the CAF members, the Canadian Armed Forces members, in the eye when voting against significant pay raises that they've been waiting for and are rightfully deserving of for a long time. So, we've also committed to updating the facilities, so CFB Trenton, for example, but all of the other military bases and barracks are going to be upgraded. They've fallen into disarray from underinvestment under Conservative past governments. We're stepping up to ensure. I remember defense spending was under 1%. Under 1% under Stephen Harper. Right. We've brought it to 2% in this year and going up significantly from that to meet our NATO target 5 years ahead of schedule. I don't know how the Conservatives cannot support that, cannot support the men and women that serve in our armed forces that, essentially sign up to protect our sovereignty, that they wouldn't support a pay raise, they wouldn't support them to have upgraded facilities, that they wouldn't support the innovative technology and equipment that...
Yes, Mr. Kelly?
My apologies, Mr. Turnbull. I wonder if you would, at this moment, grant a suspension for a few minutes to see if we've got a solution to how to amend this motion.
It would be my pleasure.
You have to ask. Is it granted?
Everyone is good. Mr. Turnbull, you have the floor. Continue to have the floor.
So I will. It looks like we've agreed on a compromise here with an amended motion. So I think the Conservatives have a version of that, if I'm not mistaken, that they can read into the record. I'm not sure that I have the.
If I may, may I address the
Yeah, I'll cede the floor.
Sorry, one second. Let me
have
just
that introduced.
Yeah, sure. Let me just check with the clerks. You have the motion?
Yes.
Okay, but I think I understand there might be some agreement. So, Mr. Kelly, go ahead.
Well, I was going to suggest procedurally, and of course we're in your hands, Chair, but and it will be up to Mr. Turnbull to proceed. But I understand that he will have to. The first step is to withdraw the amendment, so that we can then would then have the ability to create the compromise amendment. So I as chair, I think you would have to ask for unanimous. He would have to ask to withdraw and ask unanimous consent.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Will you?
Yeah, so I'll ask for unanimous consent to withdraw my amendment under the condition that we will be proceeding with an amendment that was agreed upon by all parties. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have UC? Okay, great. Thank you. Now, Mr. Kelly.
Okay. Just within the last few seconds. So the new amendment, which, if I may ask the clerk, okay, the clerk is in possession of the text. Okay, so I don't have to be, I'll be as accurate as I can be, but so I propose that we amend Monsieur Guérin's amendment or motion by deleting the preamble, given that, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report, the preceded deficit has more than doubled since the fall economic statement of 2024, and that the spending measures transform what would have been a surplus operating budget into a deficit, that he considers that the overly broad definition of capital investment used by the government creates a major discrepancy with his estimates, and the lack of an objective definition of these investments directly influences budgetary decisions, and that the Parliamentary Budget Officer's stress tests indicate that it is unlikely that government will meet its budgetary anchor of reducing the deficit to GDP ratio. So deleting those words and adding the words in the third paragraph that the testimony of the Parliamentary Budget Officer must, we've already deleted the reference to the, okay, right. So the only other part that we add is in the third paragraph that the testimony of the Parliamentary Budget Officer must necessarily take place before the study of the budget implementation bill begins, and that this testimony be considered part of the Budget Implementation Act study.
That's what you have? Yeah. Oh.
C'est possible de pouvoir lire une version en français, s'il vous plaît? Merci.
Could we get a French version?
Okay, ça vient d'être circulé. Ouais. Has it been circulated?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, c'est arrivé. Any debate? Okay.
Sure.
Has it been sent by email?
It has been sent by email.
Okay, I will. Tu l'as vu?
Have you seen it?
Received it, yeah.
Okay. I will suspend for 2 minutes. Okay? No, c'est bon? C'est correct? Okay. Okay. Debate? No? Okay. Can we pass this on unanimous consent?
Yes.
Wow, look at that. Okay, good job. So the motion carries as amended?
The amendment carries?
The amendment carries, right? Can we pass on UC the motion as amended? Yeah. Okay, great. Do I have consent from the committee to adjourn? Okay, there we go. Good job, everybody.